Hey, how's it going? So I'm working on a few videos at the moment, one that's a lot longer now, more like my Peter Dunn video, so that's exciting, so that one might come out in a couple weeks. So I want to do a more fun, quick video now. So TV1 did this political compass, specifically for New Zealand political parties, at the last election, in the 2020 election. And, now that it's far away from the election, I thought it'd be fun to look back at it and see where I, aligned up in this quiz. So it's more New Zealand centric than your normal political compass. So I thought it would be fun if I went over this one and talked about my views on these issues, and then see which party I should have voted for. I think I might have done this quiz when when it was election time, but I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% if I did this, because this is the type of quiz you should do if you are you're not too politically active, you don't know what your views are, and it's like, who should you vote for? It's a good thing to help people who aren't that politically motivated, aren't that politically, intertwined in the political system, to really, get motivated, get included in the system. So let's get into it. Abortion up to 20 weeks should require medical approval. I don't think so. I don't think abortion should be considered. Yeah, I don't think, because it's so political. I don't want you to politicize your doctor, right? I would probably say no. Up to 30 weeks or 20 weeks. No, not up to 20. I think if you needed a late term abortion, maybe. I think, starting off the bat with an abortion question, it's polarizing, right? There's very big debate about abortion. But I'd say somewhat disagree. I don't think so. The government should guarantee a minimum income for all New Zealanders, regardless of whether or not you have a job. I totally agree. Alright, so hear me out. Alright, I think you should work. I think everyone who doesn't work and has the ability to work is an arsehole. Is bad. But we, cue Joker meme, we live in a society where we're meant to work together and help each other out, right? And if you're an arsehole that does not want to work, I think at the end of the day, you have to think, what is the alternative? Do we want them to starve on the street? Do we want their kids to starve on the street? And the answer is no. The answer is no. And you can see all the stats on the benefit and all that stuff. It is not taken advantage of as much as, people on the right, the National Party and stuff would like you to think. It's mostly there for the reason that it's there for, right? We can discuss, right? Whether there should be certain benefits or things like that. But at the end of the day, the people taking advantage of the job seeker benefit and all these things are not actually, people take advantage of it. They're not in the majority, So I think, yes, I totally agree that everyone, even if they want to work or not, they should be taken care of. How much should New Zealand do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? I'm very liberal. I'm very very left wing, even on on greenhouse issues and things like that, on climate change and stuff. But my issue is that I just don't think that, if New Zealand was completely carbon neutral, what is that going to do on the global scheme of it? Now, I'm all for working internationally, all these things, and meeting certain level criteria. But, I don't think we should be hindering 100% of our country and our outputs and all that stuff on these very large goals for carbon neutral and things like that, right? I really think we need to work internationally with the EU, with Canada, with the US, with the UK, and obviously with China and stuff. Well, I'm talking about more of our allies, right? And with Australia as well, obviously. And we need to come to a middle ground where we go, the climate accords, right? The climate accords weren't as ambitious as I would have liked it to be, right? But at least it's a start, right? And then it could go from there. So yeah, I'm actually somewhat same around the middle. How high should the minimum wage be? So this would have been asked. Would it be before they increased it to $20? Okay, so let me answer this question from where it is now. I think $20 is great, but it's so it's $20 now, and I think that's good. It's a good amount. So I'm gonna say somewhat higher, thinking that this quiz was done just beforehand. I'm not opposed to, say, increasing the minimum wage when, it needs to be, right? I think that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not go needing. So, 40 hours a week, regardless of your job, you should be able to pay your rent or your mortgage, whatever. If you're on minimum wage, you're paying your rent, right? You should be able to pay your rent, feed your kids, pay bills and also have some level of entertainment and things like that. Be able to buy some alcohol, be able to, have a Netflix subscription, whatever it is, right? I think you should be able to do that. And, and that's why they worked out to $20. And I agree with that. So I'm going to say somewhat higher, but I believe it should be $20. Patients with terminal illnesses should be allowed to end their own lives with medical assistance. Strongly agree. Euthanasia was great. I voted yes on the referendum. Excellent, excellent, excellent. The best thing ACT has ever done and will ever fucking do. Man, I fucking hate the ACT Party. David Seymour used to be my favourite MP in Parliament. And I even donated to the ACT Party, hoping that they would get like 1 or 2 extra MPs that would just be like David Seymour, talking some shit, trying to push some libertarian social issues. But now they've exploded. They've got, 10 MPs in Parliament. And you know what I'm talking about? Gun rights, taxes are too high, all that shit, right? I want them to talk about drug policy. I want them to talk about, they talk about free speech. I want to talk about free speech policy. I want them to talk about euthanasia. Your personal rights. I don't want to talk about their shitty fucking supply side economics crap. It's really annoying. It sucks. Because I always saw David Seymour as, a great alternative to the National Party. But now they've become, a terrible fucking garbage party. And that's what they used to be as well before David Seymour took over. I'm not going to try to say the ACT Party has been this great, Plymouth of greatness. They've been a shit party since their founding by fucking Roger Douglas and shit. But I thought David Seymour was a bit of a difference, bit of a meme lord, bit of a fun member of Parliament, someone who could bring up great social issues that no one else is talking about, and that party it's not doing what it was doing before. So strongly agree on euthanasia though. How much money should the government invest in developing railways? I would say somewhat more. I think I think public transport is the future. I think paying for public transport, just at the end of the day, shouldn't all buses be free? Shouldn't all trains be free? We want people to be taking the buses and trains. And do we want government systems to pay for themselves? We don't expect that to be the case in hospitals, right? We don't expect hospitals to be cost neutral. We've accepted that things that the government does is meant to cost money. And the taxpayers pay for that, and it comes out of our taxes to be used as a public good. Right? We don't expect the police to be revenue neutral, right? We don't expect the ambulances to be revenue neutral, even though ambulances aren't even paid for by the government fund. That's a whole separate issue. Only in Wellington it is. But, so I would say, much more. I think railways are great. The government should ease restrictions on property developers. I actually somewhat agree. Okay, I think there are a lot of issues with the Resource Management Act, right? That's the issue here, right? Pretty much every party in Parliament goes, the Resource Management Act is a pile of shit, but they all disagree on how to fix it, So, I do think that property development because we need to encourage people to build houses. We're in a housing crisis, right? So more houses to be built is better. And the thing is, I'm not one to say that regulation is standing in the way of innovation and standing in the way of great things that the private market and and all these great companies are going to do. But I do agree that certain housing regulations are hindering building. Now, I'm not saying all housing regulation is bad. Of course not. I think that, certain things, especially health and safety things, are very important. And I also believe in things such as, regulation on landlords and stuff, such as making sure their houses are insulated, all that stuff. I think that stuff's great. I think the things that I have issue with is consent rules and things like where you can build and what type of land you can build on and urban development, things like that. Those are the things I would want to ease up restrictions on, not on health and safety and not on say renters' rights. How much should wealthier people pay in their taxes? I say much more. I was hesitant on the Greens wealth tax, but the more I think about it, the more I like it. I think that if you have a lot of money, you can afford to pay more to society for the people who can't pay a lot of money. And also you didn't make that money yourself. Barack Obama said that. I'm not the hugest fan of Obama, but he said that if you did not make that factory, you do not one man does not make a business, right? It is all the people below him. And you can argue that, it's a free market. These people have signed a contract to do X job, and who am I to tell you that you can't make money based on a fair contract with someone else? And because I think it's exploitation. I think that say McDonald's, having minimum wage employees, but then making bank on and pocketing all the profits based on their workers doing minimum wage work it's exploitation. It's not sharing in the wealth. And I'm not a full communist, right? I don't think that, we should seize the means of production and everyone should have the same paycheck or whatever, right? But I do think that we need to have more equality in our paychecks and less of a working class and a wealth class. I think we shouldn't have that. So I would even say much more. Whether wealthy people should pay much more, even though we're not to the extent of the wealth disparity as they do in the States, say. But we're getting there, we're getting there. Give it time. Statues of historical figures deemed as racist should be removed from public spaces. I somewhat agree. I'm not one that goes out and spray paints statues and pulls them down and stuff. It was a very American thing. Winston Peters said that. He was like, I'm tired of American issues coming to New Zealand where they have no means to be here, right? They were tearing down statues of Columbus and of who else? Confederate statues and stuff. And I more or less agree with that in the American system, right? But in New Zealand, do we really have that Civil War slavery type history? And we do have bad history of the settlement in New Zealand, and we had the Maori Land Wars. We have a lot of issues with the formation of New Zealand from the native people, the Maori. But I more or less think that the Maori have it the best out of any native people that have been settled and had their land taken over. And then that's not excusing it, right? But I think that we really try in New Zealand, and we really do have a lot of great things to try to benefit that. So it's not like we're jacking off James Cook. Well, I guess he's on the 50-cent coin, right? Why his boat is, right? So maybe that's something I would be pro changing, taking James Cook's endeavor off the 50-cent coin, and just I don't know. At the end of the day, shouldn't the public spaces be for the public? Maybe we should have votes on that shit. Yeah, I don't agree with the vigilante tear that shit down. I'm all for votes. Let's have some referendums. So, historical figures deemed racist, I'd say somewhat agree. How much should the government limit oil and gas exploration in New Zealand? What is the rules now? Well, they banned the further contracts to drill offshore. But those contracts that are currently in, so they banned them in 2018 or 2017, and those current contracts are still in place from under the national government. It's tricky to just say, let's just cancel these government contracts. These are companies that have jobs, people employed by them and stuff. It's a very tricky middle ground, but I do somewhat agree that we should stop the gas and oil exploration in New Zealand, because I don't think it's needed. We're not that big of a exporter on these types of goods. It's not a big market in this country, so I don't think it's really it's gonna do too bad if we do ban it. But that's coming from me, right? When there are small community towns that are around coal mines and things like that, right? That are important for these small towns. So it's very easy for me to say, coming from a guy living in Auckland, right, to say that these small town industries need to be shut down. It's a very tricky situation. I do understand it, but yeah, I think it's the least you can do towards the greenhouse issues I was talking about before, right? I don't believe in say let's ban all petrol in New Zealand. I don't think that's good, right? But I think moving towards electric cars, moving towards banning oil exploration and things like that, and trying to decrease the amount we do without overall dampening our economy and just destroying it, I think that's what we should do. So somewhat more, I would say. Violent offenders under 18 years old should be sentenced as adults. Under 18, no, I disagree. I just think, we have the ages for a reason, right? Kids are not adults. We understand this. We realize this, right? Kids are treated differently than adults because their brains aren't formed properly, right? They're not the same. So like a 15-year-old, right, committing a crime, still bad, not excusing it, but it can be still more understandable. And I think people like that can be rehabilitated more. And I have more of a nuanced discussion on sentencing and punishment. I believe more in rehabilitation than in punishment. There'll probably be a question about that later. So I'd say somewhat disagree that they shouldn't be tried as adults. New Zealand should be less reliable on other countries for its goods and services. I disagree. I don't think that we should be so protectionist on things like that. I think on things like food, even though we're a big exporting country for food, it is an issue when you depend on things such as food from another country, especially in a time of a pandemic or a time of war, right? Food is very important, and that's why you have your big subsidies in America for your farms and your agriculture, because it wouldn't be profitable in America to farm. But then America would be so dependent on other countries for their food, and it wouldn't be good in a time of war and a time of the pandemic. So I would say somewhat disagree. How difficult should it be for a business to dismiss new employees? I think somewhat more. I think that more employee power is better. I totally agree in unionization, things like that. This new bill of forced unionization is very interesting that Labour's proposing, and we'll see how it goes. They've only announced it; they haven't got the full legislation out yet, so we'll see how that goes. Because it seems like it's going to be a very Scandinavian thing of every single person in the country having to be in a union, and it's fascinating. It's certainly interesting. We'll see. I'm very pro union, so international students should be allowed to enter New Zealand immediately. So I guess this is a very pandemic thing. I agree. The government should restore funding to charter schools. I strongly disagree. I think I just didn't understand charter schools. I used to go, what's the harm? But I think there is harm. I think there are a lot of studies that show that charter schools aren't actually that great, and this was another proposal that didn't really, it doesn't really do it for me. I don't like it. I think public funded schools are the best, that every single person in the country can get the same education. We can argue about the decile system and public schools versus private schools, but I don't like charter schools. Disagree, because they're too profit driven, where a school is meant to be education driven. It's not a service exchanged for money. It's a service that everyone needs to have. You must have this, regardless of your ability to pay. So it shouldn't be profit driven. The government should provide free lunches for students in state schools. I totally agree. I've actually heard arguments that it should be illegal for parents to be able to give pack their lunches for kids, because there becomes this envy of that, of kids who can't afford parents who can't afford to give their kids good lunches, and then their kids have to have the state lunches, and then they're discriminated against, similar to uniforms. You don't want bullying to happen in schools. I wouldn't go that far. I don't think I agree with that, but the free lunches thing, I totally agree with. I would even say strongly agree. I think it's great. We pay for breakfast in low decile schools. I think that free food for all schools, free healthy food. It's scientifically proven that kids study more when they eat breakfast than when they have a full belly, right? And and if they can eat at school instead of eating at home, I think it'll be great. And also, it saves parents money. And this is saving the money of your taxpayers, of your middle class. It's great. How much tax should corporations pay? I'd say somewhat more. You don't want to overly too much, but I'd say somewhat more. Because you have the flat rate for corporations. Obviously, progressive tax rates don't really work for corporations. It's not really the same as your individual. But yeah, I'd say somewhat more. How much should the government spend on rehabilitation services to address drug abuse? I'd say much more. And you know what? Then I'd say legalize all other drugs. Legalize all drugs, and then just pay for drug rehabilitation programs with the taxes that you get from drugs. I need to make a separate video on my drug policy. Please let me know if you want to know, hear me talk about my drug policy. I'm very fascinated on drug legalization. You should legalize, tax, and regulate all drugs. There should be no illegal drugs. So I'd say somewhat more. How much debt should the government incur during the COVID-19 crisis? Well, it's very tricky, right? It's somewhat more, much more. It's get the debt that you need to do to pay for the stuff, right? So I guess I'd say somewhat more if they needed it, I'm not a deficit hawk, I I don't think our deficit is overly that high at the moment for what it needs to be. You know, like, I think Labour is kind of giving into austerity at the moment, which I don't think is that great. You know, I think you need to be paying your nurses more. You need to be investing in infrastructure, investing in our country more. And this new bill that they've just the new budget that they've just done recently, I don't overly love it. Like, I think it's okay. I think it's fine. It shows where Labour stands, but I think it could be a lot more left wing, a lot more bold, and I think it really shows that they're very centrist and very well, they've been doing a bunch of good things I do appreciate, but yeah, not to the level that I would like. So I'd say somewhat more. I'm not really like 100% like how much like they should be borrowing, how much they have borrowed, because they still have a bunch of money in the slush fund. New Zealand should deport foreigners who have been convicted of criminal offences. I'm actually very torn on this. So I do agree that it's like, why should my taxpayers go towards, say, housing, Brendan Tarrant, the Christchurch shooter for 40 years or however long he's in prison, when he's an Australian citizen? Australians should be paying for this. But it's like, what should we do? Should we send him to Australia and then, but like, how can the criminal courts work? Like, what if you are arrested for something that is not illegal in the other country? So, for example, what if you're a New Zealander who went to America and had sex with a 16-year-old, right? Then you're deported back to New Zealand to what? To go to prison for having sex with someone who's legal in New Zealand? That wouldn't make sense, So like that's an example of a different law, right? But like, such as smoking marijuana in a country where it's illegal, like New Zealand, right? But then what if you deported like an American back to America to what? Go to prison for smoking weed? Like, not that you really go to prison for smoking weed in New Zealand, but you know what I mean. Like, it's tricky to expect someone to be criminally charged in another country where it's not a crime. But for things like murder and rape and all that stuff, they're universally illegal. Like, it's tricky, but it's like, shouldn't we have control over that? Like, when those French spies came here and did the Rainbow Warrior attack, and we arrested them and sent them back to France, they released them. They did not punish those people. Even though it's tricky, it's like, do you punish government workers? Like, would you punish a soldier for doing what they're told to do? That is tricky, but like, they release them instead of punishing them, right? So it's like, we could have punished them if we kept them under our jurisdiction. So I'm going to say somewhat disagree. The government should impose a royalty on companies that export New Zealand water. I totally agree. I would say strongly agree. I think it's certainly interesting what they're talking about now about allowing iwi to have control over water rights in New Zealand. I think it's better than no one having rights over water. So in New Zealand, you can bottle up water for free, though you don't actually have a royalty cost. And I think that's bad. I think we have a resource in this country that companies are exploiting. So I think, I strongly agree. How much should the government do to make amends for injustice committed against Maori? I would say much more, even though I do think we have done a lot of good stuff. I believe certain reparations are due. I think a lot of things. I think the things like the Maori wards and the Maori DHBs and health wards, I think they're working their way to being equitable and being fair for the injustices that were committed under the settlement in New Zealand. So I'd say much more. The government should cover the cost of dental care for adults with low incomes. They should cover the dental care of all people in the country. It shouldn't be just low income. It's very weird, like, because we have universal healthcare in this country, yet it doesn't cover dental, and it's very strange. It should cover dental. It should cover eye care. It should be encompassing, and our country pays for kids up to, I think they're 17, maybe 18, to have their all dental is covered by that. Not orthodontist, right? So not your not braces, but for your dental care, that's all covered for 17 and under, right? And why stop there? I think just keep going, pay for everyone, cover in your taxes, done, easy. Because the thing is, people don't get their dental stuff done. I've been to the dentist once since getting above that threshold, and that was an accident. I didn't realize I had to pay for it. I showed up and they were like, all right, $300 please. I'm like, fuck that, I'm never going back to the dentist again. And it's like, my teeth are going to be fucked. The best thing to do is to invest in preemptive measures, right? So by every single citizen being able to get their teeth cleaned and checked up on once a year or whatever, right, would be better than having everyone with fillings. How difficult should it be to purchase a gun in New Zealand? I would say somewhat more. Honestly, I don't actually know the full, like, process to go through a gun. I know it's a lot harder than a lot of other countries, but, yeah, I'd say somewhat more. You know, like, why have, you know, you don't need a gun unless you're a hunter, you know? Like, really, I don't believe in the legitimacy of gun rights as a self-defense tool. I don't. How difficult should it be to access welfare in New Zealand? I don't actually think it should be that difficult. I would say somewhat less. I think that, you know, if you need it, even if you want to be on it, you should use it. As I said, statistics show welfare is not abused to such a level that, say, the ACT Party, the National Party, wants us to believe. Like, a supermajority of people who use welfare are using it for the correct purpose that the welfare was made for. And we could have a discussion whether we should have all these welfare systems and all that stuff, you know, but on the merits that they are legitimate, you know, like, if we say that this welfare is legitimate for people using it correctly, people aren't taking advantage of it as much as people like it to make it out to be. So yeah, I'd say somewhat less. How many immigrants should New Zealand admit? It's tricky in the COVID climate, and also like Labour's talking about they're going to completely revamp the immigration process in New Zealand, which, you know, it's interesting. We'll see. Labour is a pretty low immigration party. You know, it's very strange, but, you know, our centre-left party is not pro-immigration. Like a lot of parties in New Zealand are very protectionist on immigration. It sucks. You know, I'm quite pro-immigrants, you know. Like, I think they make the country a better place. I think what's tricky is the fact that we do have a housing crisis, letting people in, and the fact that we, you know, like, the way the immigration process works is it really benefits you if you're richer, right? The richer you are, the more likely you're going to be allowed to come into the country. And that means you're bringing more money into the country, which is what, like, it's like, yes, we love that. We want people to bring money into the country. But these people are then going to buy houses. You know, like, if you're letting more low-income people, working-class people, to come into the country and you know, work their butt off and strive for the New Zealand dream. You know, the dream of owning a house, the dream of raising your kids here, the dream of forming a great society. You know, those are the people we want. Do we really want, you know, the rich Chinese people coming and buying 3 houses and not using them, or just, like, renting them out and not being able to, and leaving out hardworking Kiwis from the market? You know, I'm pro-immigrant. I'm not very protectionist. So I'm going to say somewhat more. I'm not sure about many more. You know, we do have a lack of infrastructure for more people, you know. How much of a role should the Treaty of Waitangi have in New Zealand law? Much more. It should be the center of a New Zealand constitution. That's what it should be. We don't have a constitution. We have, like, an unwritten constitution. It's a whole thing. But I think the Treaty of Waitangi, our founding document, needs to be cemented as, like, a very important document in New Zealand and a part of New Zealand law. And we need to address the injustices that that there have been from the treaty. So yeah, I would say much more. Cannabis should be legal. Strongly agree. You know, very, very pro drug. The government should prevent foreign ownership of residential properties. I somewhat agree, only because we have such a lack of housing. If we had, you know, a goods flow of housing in this country, I wouldn't oppose to, say, French people having a summer home here, or, you know, even, like, people from China owning a house, living in China, but owning a house in New Zealand and then renting it, right? I think at the end of the day, landlords have a place in our housing market, right? So I think that, yes, you should be able to own a foreign house, just not right now. So I would say preventing foreign buy, yeah, I would say somewhat agree, but only for now. I think in a perfect world, we wouldn't. I wouldn't want that. Public should be allowed to change their sex listed on their birth certificate without having to undergo a medical treatment to change the gender. Sure. Like, the people who are against this, I just don't understand why. I don't get it. Who cares? I really don't understand. It is, like, people wanting to just control other people. It's like, let someone, like, even if you don't believe that someone is legitimately another gender or whatever, you say, fuck you, you know, like, listen to the science, whatever. Like, how does it affect you if it's different on their birth certificate? I just don't get it. I've never really understood, you know, like, ever since I was old enough to, you know, think politically, I've always gone, I don't care. You know, like, I have friends who are transgender, I have friends who are gay, whatever. And I don't care. You know, like, It's not even like that that much of an important thing. It's something important to you personally, sure, but is it something to worry about other people? I don't get it. I've never understood. So strongly agree. Oh, interesting. So this is so which parties and stuff do I like? Do you like John Tamaheri? I actually quite like him. I quite like John Tamaheri. He's cool. I like the Maori Party. So I'm going to say 8. Oh, so this one have, so John Tamaheri used to be the co-leader of the Maori Party. But now, what's his name? Pebble Man. He's the leader of the Maori Party. Raui Waiti. He replaced John Tamaheri after Raui Waiti won his electorate seat, and John Tamaheri didn't. But I like John Tamaheri. I'm considering changing to the Maori role so I can vote for him next time in 2023. It's going to be great. I'm going to give him an 8. David Seymour, you're going down and down in my books, bro. You get a 6. Winnie, nah, I don't like Winston. Jamie Lee Ross, 0. Who likes that? TK, 0. So they're the advanced boys, terrible. So it's so annoying. Collins, I really dislike her. I'll give her a 4. She's not as bad as, Jamie Lee Ross, but, leader of the National Party. She's not going to survive to the next election. No way. 4. Oh, this is the guy of the New Conservative. He was the new Conservative Party leader. You can have a 1. You can be better than Billy TK. I like James Shaw. He's great. I have issues with the Green Party. Not on policy, not on rhetoric, but on, how well they use their political power. I feel like they squander everything they do, and they don't actually, they're not the left-wing party we need, They're not criticizing the Labour government. They've promised for 3 years that they'll never vote against a bill from the Labour Party. That's ridiculous. So I like you, James Shaw, but you need to pick up your game and be more hostile towards the Labour Party. So this is the other deputy of the Maori Party. She's not as vocal as Raui Waiti, but I like her. You can give her a 6. Marijuana Davidson, I like you as well. Co-leader of the Greens, 7. Jeffrey Simmons, I love this guy. He was the leader of the Top Party. I love the Top Party. That's why I ended up voting for. Sadly, he quit the party, and it's sad. Jacinda, I quite like Jacinda. More, I get critical from the amount that people say how much they love her and say she's like the second coming of Roosevelt and second coming of FDR, and it's she's not. She's like a center left leader, but she's not and she's charismatic, she's nice, she's charming, but it's she's not pushing the envelope. She's not standing up to power. Well, she is the power, right? But she's not what people try to make her out to be. So make her 7. So this is talking about the parties you like. I quite like the Top Party, 8. New Conservative, 0. Advance, 0. New Zealand First, you can have a 2. ACT Party, you can have a 3. Labour Party, you can have a 6. Green Party can have a 7. Maori Party at 7 too. I quite like the Maori Party. I think they're doing a good job as an opposition party to Labour. National Party, you can have a 4. Okay, so here's my results. They kind of changed the compass a bit, so it's not the political compass, it's reverse, which is weird. So it's based on a social thing of conservative or progressive, and an economic one of left and right. Okay. So it says I agree with the Green Party the most, which I think it makes sense. Then the Labour Party, then the Opportunities Party. So that's interesting to me. I think I should be a lot higher on the Opportunities Party. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what they stand for. I don't think so. I did read all this stuff, at the election time. Yeah, then the Maori Party, then then the New Zealand First Party. I'm working my long video, surprise for anyone, listening to the end of the video, is, I'm working on a big video about Winston Peters, right, about the new, the leader of the New Zealand First Party, and, the very fascinating read, and it makes me like him a lot more, looking back in the day, if he was what he was in the 80s and 90s, I think he would be my favorite, MP. I think he was very Bernie Sanders, very populist, very, standing up for corruption, standing up against corruption, standing up against the powerful, speaking his mind, being very witty, very charming, very fun. So and understandable, the National Party. Apparently I believe with the Advanced Party more than the ACT Party. That's very funny. Not surprising. But I think more or less, this economic table, this political compass like table thing. It's very useful to see where you line up. So it's really showing how Labour and Top aren't actually overly that different. I think just Top's like approach to the housing crisis and being like the only party to say that they want housing prices to go down. Like very important stuff. But yeah, like I feel like I'm much closer to the Maori Party and the Green Party than I am to, say, Labour, and I think this graph does show it. Obviously, I'm far from the ACT Party, right? Especially on economic or social issues, So I think, yeah, so I thought this was a fun exercise. I don't know, like, I'll leave in the description this quiz as well. Let me know how you did as well. I'm sure if you watch my stuff, you'll probably be, more, left-leaning, I'd say, more of a Labour Green voter, probably. But, like, really, check out the Maori Party. Like, I'm fascinated by them, and I could definitely see myself voting for them in the future. Especially just my electorate vote. Like, I'm in close Warbrooks Electric in, Auckland Central. So, like, if she was running a tight race, I guess I would stay with her and vote for her. But I'm not sure. That's 2023. Fucking ages away. But, yeah, so this was fun, and cheers for watching.